Hey there, future diplomats. I know you're all probably deep in the trenches right now, getting ready for the UPSC, especially those of you with international relations as your optional.
Yeah,
It's a beast of an exam.
definitely a challenge.
But acing that IR section isn't just about, memorizing facts and figures and dates and names.
Right.
It's about understanding the big ideas, the frameworks, the uh, the things that help us make sense of this crazy world.
Yeah, the big picture.
And that's where Isaiah Berlin comes in.
That's right.
Now, what I think is so interesting about Berlin is that he's not just some like dusty old philosopher from, a bygone era.
Right.
He was right there in the thick of it during the 20th century, like wars, revolutions, the rise and fall of ideologies. He saw it all.
Absolutely. I mean, he really lived through some of the most tumultuous times in modern history.
Exactly. So he wasn't just theorizing from some ivory tower. He was grappling with the real-world consequences of ideas, which I think makes his work even more relevant, especially for you all, as you prepare to tackle the real-world challenges of international relations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you can see that in his writing, that engagement with the real world. He was especially concerned with this idea of pluralism, which is a big shift from the kind of thinking that dominated intellectual circles before him.
Okay.
Back then, there was this strong belief in positivism, like the dominant way of thinking.
Oh, positivism.
Yeah, the idea that there's one objective truth.
Okay, so like a single answer key to the universe.
Yeah, exactly. One right way of understanding the world. And, if we just find the right formula, we can solve all the world's problems.
Right.
But Berlin, he looks around and sees a world full of different cultures, values, and ideologies. And he's like, wait a minute, this positivism thing just doesn't add up.
Doesn't quite work that way.
It's too simple. That's where pluralism comes in. It's the idea that there are multiple, equally valid ways of seeing things.
Okay, so instead of searching for that one right answer, it's more about acknowledging that there are different viewpoints and that they're legitimate.
Exactly.
And that seems pretty crucial when you're dealing with, let's say, negotiating a peace treaty
Oh, absolutely.
or mediating a conflict between two countries that have completely different values and priorities and histories.
Yeah, I mean, think about how many times we've seen those kinds of clashes in international relations.
Right, exactly.
And that's also where Berlin's critique of thinkers like Oakeshott comes into play.
Okay, Oakeshott.
Yeah, Oakeshott was all about tradition.
Okay.
He argued that the best way to approach politics is to rely on, the wisdom of the past.
So basically, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stick to the tried and true.
Yeah, sort of, follow the precedents. But Berlin argued that this kind of faith in tradition could actually stifle progress and prevent us from addressing new challenges.
Yeah.
He felt we needed critical thinking, not just blind acceptance of the status quo.
Right.
And I think this is a really important lesson for UPSC aspirants, especially those focusing on international relations.
Yeah, because the world is constantly changing. New challenges are emerging.
All the time, yeah.
And you can't just rely on old solutions to solve new problems. Right?
Absolutely not. Nope.
You've got to be able to think critically, analyze different perspectives, come up with innovative solutions, be adaptable.
Exactly. And Berlin's emphasis on pluralism helps us do just that. It encourages us to approach international relations with a more nuanced, more empathetic perspective.
Okay, so we've got pluralism as a key pillar of Berlin's thought.
One of the big ones, yeah.
But what about his views on the role of philosophy itself?
Right.
Was he, trying to create some grand overarching theory to explain absolutely everything?
That's a great question. And actually, Berlin was quite skeptical of those kinds of grand theories, especially when it came to politics.
Yeah.
He didn't see philosophy as a tool for, social engineering,
Okay.
for designing the perfect society.
So he wasn't trying to hand us a blueprint for utopia.
Not at all. He saw the world as too complex, too full of competing values and interests for any single system to provide all the answers.
Right, right.
Instead, he believed the role of philosophy was to provide clarity to our thinking,
Okay.
to help us understand, the underlying values that drive us.
So it's more about sharpening our thinking tools than handing us a prepackaged solution.
Exactly.
Kind of like how the UPSC doesn't just test your knowledge,
Right.
but also your ability to analyze, critique, synthesize different ideas.
Exactly. And this idea is reflected in one of his most famous works, Concepts and Categories,
Oh, okay.
where he really digs into the importance of carefully examining the concepts we use to understand reality.
Yeah, because the words we use, the categories we create, they shape how we see the world.
They really do.
and how we approach problems.
And that's particularly relevant in international relations,
Oh, absolutely.
where, misunderstandings and misinterpretations can have huge consequences.
Yeah, really high stakes. So for Berlin, philosophy wasn't about imposing a single worldview, but rather helping us see the world more clearly in all its messy complexity.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
He embraced the complexity.
Right.
And that, I think, is where his ideas become truly valuable for UPSC aspirants, particularly those of you focusing on international relations. He's not giving you a cheat sheet for the exam, but he's giving you a way of thinking that can help you navigate the complexities of global politics, both in your studies and in your future careers.
Yeah, I like that. It's like a mental framework or a set of tools.
Yeah.
So we've talked about pluralism. We've talked about Berlin's views on the role of philosophy. But there's another big idea he's famous for, his ideas about freedom. And I think this is where things get really interesting, especially in the context of international relations.
It is indeed, and it's closely tied to his ideas about pluralism, because for Berlin, freedom isn't just about individual liberty. It's also about the freedom of different cultures and societies to pursue their own visions of the good life.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not just about me as an individual having freedom to make my own choices.
Right.
It's about entire societies having the freedom to define what good even means.
Exactly. And that's a really radical idea when you think about it.
It is. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll dive deeper into those ideas about freedom and how they play out on the global stage. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the brilliant mind of Isaiah Berlin. You know we're exploring how his ideas can be a real game changer for those of you gearing up for the UPSC, especially if you've got international relations as your optional.
Yeah, before the break, we were just getting into Berlin's concept of freedom
Right.
and how it's intertwined with his views on pluralism.
Exactly.
It sounds like he's going beyond just individual rights and looking at freedom on a much larger scale.
Absolutely. Berlin recognized that different cultures and societies might have, very different ideas about what constitutes a good life,
Right.
about what values are most important. And he argued that true freedom means allowing these different visions to coexist,
Okay.
even if they sometimes clash.
So it's not about imposing one single model of freedom on the whole world.
Right.
It's about recognizing that freedom can take many forms, depending on the cultural and historical context.
You nailed it. And this is a crucial insight for anyone dealing with international relations. I mean, think about it. If you're trying to negotiate a trade agreement or resolve a conflict between two countries with very different values, you can't just assume that your definition of freedom or justice is universally applicable.
It's like trying to fit square pegs into round holes.
Exactly.
It's just not going to work. You need to understand where the other side is coming from, what their values and priorities are,
Yeah, you need to understand their perspective.
and then find a way to bridge those differences.
Exactly. And Berlin's pluralism provides the intellectual framework for doing just that. It encourages us to approach these situations with humility,
Right.
recognizing that our own values aren't necessarily the only valid ones.
Okay, so pluralism is like a superpower for diplomats and policymakers. It helps them navigate the complexities of a world where one size definitely does not fit all. But what about those situations where values clash head-on, where there's no easy compromise?
Right.
How does Berlin's framework help us deal with those kinds of conflicts?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it goes to the heart of what Berlin called the tragic dimension of politics. He recognized that in a world of diverse and often incommensurable values, conflict is inevitable.
Okay.
There will be times when we have to make difficult choices, when we have to prioritize one value over another, even if it means sacrificing something important.
So it's not about finding some magical solution where everyone gets what they want. It's about acknowledging that in the real world, sometimes there are no easy answers. And we have to make tough decisions with imperfect information.
Precisely. And this is a lesson that's often overlooked, especially in international relations. There's a tendency to think that if we just have enough goodwill and understanding, we can resolve any conflict peacefully. But Berlin reminds us that sometimes the values at stake are so fundamental, so deeply held, that compromise might not be possible.
And that's where things get really challenging.
They do.
Especially for those of you preparing for the UPSC, because you're not just being tested on your knowledge of international relations. You're being tested on your ability to think critically and ethically about these complex situations.
That's right. The UPSC wants to see that you can grapple with these tough questions,
Yeah.
that you can analyze different perspectives, weigh competing values, and come up with solutions that are both realistic and principled. And Berlin's ideas provide a powerful framework for doing just that.
Okay, so we've got pluralism, freedom, the tragic dimension of politics. These are all big, heavy ideas.
Mhm.
How do they translate into concrete skills that can help you excel in the UPSC and, more importantly, in your future careers?
Well, for starters, they help you develop a much deeper understanding of international relations.
Okay.
Instead of just memorizing facts and figures, you start to see the underlying dynamics, the clashing values,
Okay.
the historical and cultural forces that shape global politics.
So it's like you're getting a backstage pass to the world stage, seeing how the whole production comes together
Exactly.
instead of just watching the final performance.
Exactly. And this deeper understanding is crucial for excelling in the essay portion of the UPSC. You'll be able to craft more nuanced, insightful arguments, showing the examiners that you can think critically and engage with different perspectives.
So it's not just about regurgitating information, it's about showing that you can analyze, synthesize, and critically evaluate different ideas. Kind of like how Berlin himself approached the study of history and philosophy.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the essays either.
Right.
These skills will also be invaluable in the interview stage of the UPSC, where you'll be grilled by a panel of experts on your knowledge and understanding of international relations.
I've heard those interviews can be pretty intense.
Oh, they can be.
They're not just looking for textbook answers. They want to see how you think on your feet, how you respond to challenging questions.
Right. And that's where a deep understanding of Berlin's ideas can really shine. It allows you to engage in a thoughtful, nuanced discussion, even on controversial topics.
Okay.
You can acknowledge different viewpoints, articulate the values underpinning those viewpoints, and present your own arguments in a clear and persuasive manner.
So even if you're faced with a tough question or a skeptical interviewer, you can draw on Berlin's framework to demonstrate your intellectual depth and your ability to navigate complexity. It's like having a secret weapon in your arsenal.
And beyond the UPSC itself.
Right.
These are skills that will serve you well throughout your career in diplomacy, policymaking, or any field related to international relations.
Because let's face it, the real world is even messier and more unpredictable than any exam.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You'll be dealing with real people, real conflicts, real dilemmas that demand nuanced thinking and a deep understanding of different values and perspectives.
Right. And Berlin's ideas provide a roadmap for navigating this complex terrain.
Okay.
He helps you understand the lay of the land, anticipate potential pitfalls, and chart a course towards a more just and peaceful world.
Okay, so we've talked about how Berlin's ideas can help you ace the UPSC and excel in your careers. But I'm curious, how did Berlin himself view the relationship between philosophy and political action?
Right.
Did he see philosophy as a purely theoretical exercise, or did he believe it had practical implications for how we shape the world?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And it's one that gets to the heart of Berlin's impact on political thought.
Yeah.
Remember, he wasn't interested in creating some grand utopian scheme.
Yeah.
He was more interested in equipping us with the intellectual tools to grapple with the messy realities of politics.
So he wasn't trying to hand us a step-by-step guide to creating the perfect society. He was more interested in helping us develop the critical thinking skills and ethical awareness to make informed, responsible decisions in a complex world.
Exactly. He believed that philosophy could help us clarify our thinking, expose hidden assumptions, and understand the values at play in any given situation. And this understanding, he believed, was essential for making ethical and effective political choices.
Okay, so Berlin wasn't about handing us ready-made answers. He was about giving us the tools to find our own answers, to navigate the complexities of the world with wisdom and compassion.
Exactly. And this is where his work becomes particularly relevant for those of you aspiring to careers in diplomacy, policymaking, or international development. Your job won't be to simply apply a set of predetermined rules or follow a rigid ideology. It will be to navigate complex situations, weigh competing values, and make judgments that serve the greater good.
So it's not about having all the answers, but about having the intellectual agility and ethical compass to make the best possible decisions in a world of imperfect choices.
Exactly.
Berlin equips you with the tools to be a thoughtful, responsible, and effective leader on the world stage.
That's a great way to put it.
This has all been incredibly insightful, but we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Before we move on, let's take a moment to recap the key takeaways from our deep dive into Berlin's thought and why they matter for UPSC aspirants.
That's a great idea. Let's synthesize what we've learned so far and connect it back to the practical challenges you'll face in the exam and beyond.
Okay, so we've made it through this journey through Berlin's key ideas.
Yeah.
Pluralism, freedom, that tragic dimension of politics.
Right. Big stuff.
It's clear that he's challenging us to move beyond those simplistic solutions.
Yeah.
And to really embrace the messy, complex reality of the world.
The world as it is, not as we wish it was.
Especially when it comes to international relations.
Yeah, I mean, he's really pushing us to think differently about how we approach global politics. And remember, he's not just leaving us with a critique. He's offering a powerful framework for understanding and navigating this complexity. He's urging us to develop that intellectual agility and ethical awareness to make sound judgments in a world where easy answers are pretty rare.
Which is exactly what the UPSC demands of you, right?
Absolutely.
They're not looking for robots who can just, spit back facts and figures.
Right.
You want critical thinkers who can analyze, synthesize, apply that knowledge to real-world situations.
To actually think for themselves. Yeah, and, think about how Berlin's ideas can elevate your approach to those UPSC essay questions. Like, imagine you're asked to analyze the effectiveness of international sanctions against a particular country. A Berlin-informed approach wouldn't just focus on the economic impact.
Right. It's not just about the numbers.
Exactly. You'd also delve into the cultural and political context, considering the values and motivations of all the actors involved. You'd explore the potential unintended consequences, weigh the ethical implications of such action.
Right, because sometimes those sanctions can backfire.
They absolutely can, and you need to be able to think through those possibilities. You'd be demonstrating a depth of understanding and critical thinking that goes beyond a superficial analysis. And that's what sets apart a truly exceptional UPSC candidate.
Yeah, it shows you can really grapple with the complexity.
Exactly. It's like the difference between solving a math problem by just plugging numbers into a formula versus actually understanding the underlying principles and concepts that make the formula work.
I like that analogy.
Berlin helps you become a master of the principles, not just a memorizer of formulas.
So it's about understanding the why behind the what.
Exactly.
What's also fascinating is that Berlin's framework also equips you for that interview stage of the UPSC.
Oh, yeah, those interviews.
But I've heard they can be pretty intense.
Oh, they're notorious.
They're designed to assess not just your knowledge, but your ability to think critically, articulate your ideas persuasively. It's like a whole other level of challenge.
They really want to see how you think on your feet, how you respond to those challenging questions. And that's where a deep understanding of Berlin's ideas can really shine. It allows you to engage in a thoughtful, nuanced discussion, even on those controversial topics.
So you're ready for anything they throw at you.
You're prepared. You're not just rattling off facts. You're engaging in a real conversation.
So it's not enough to just know, the facts about the history of the UN or the principles of international law.
Right.
You need to be able to connect those facts to broader concepts.
Yeah, make those connections.
Analyze different perspectives and defend your arguments with clarity and conviction.
You've got to own your ideas, basically.
Right. You got to show that you thought deeply about these issues.
Exactly. And, imagine you're asked about the role of the UN in a contemporary conflict. A Berlin-informed response wouldn't just, recite the UN's charter or list its peacekeeping missions. You'd delve into the complexities of the situation, acknowledging the different perspectives involved, the conflicting values at play, and the challenges of achieving a lasting resolution.
You're showing them that you get the bigger picture.
Yeah, that you can see beyond the surface.
You'd be showcasing your ability to think like a diplomat, someone who understands those nuances of international relations.
Right.
And can navigate those tricky waters with both skill and sensitivity.
It's about being able to walk that tightrope. And that's exactly the kind of candidate the UPSC is looking for.
Right, the people they want to represent India on the world stage.
Future leaders who can do that with intelligence, integrity, and a deep understanding of the forces that shape global politics. But here's the thing. Berlin's insights aren't just valuable for acing an exam. They're essential for anyone who wants to make a positive impact in the world, especially in fields like diplomacy, policymaking, international development. Because remember, the real world is far more complex and unpredictable than any textbook or exam scenario. You'll be facing real challenges, real dilemmas, real human beings with their own values, motivations, and aspirations.
So Berlin's not just about getting a job, it's about preparing you for a lifetime of making a difference.
Absolutely.
His ideas can help you navigate the complexities of a globalized world with wisdom, compassion, and a deep commitment to human dignity and freedom.
It's about bringing those values to life in your work, making them real.
And on that note, dear listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Isaiah Berlin.
That went by fast.
I know, right? We hope you found it illuminating and empowering. Berlin's ideas are tools for your mind. They help you to think more critically, act more ethically, and approach the world with a deeper sense of understanding and compassion.
And remember, those are skills you can take with you wherever you go.
So as you continue your UPSC journey, or any endeavor that calls you to engage with the world's complexities, let Berlin be your guide. Let his wisdom challenge your assumptions, broaden your perspectives, and inspire you to make a positive difference.
And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations of the thinkers and ideas that shape our world. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep challenging the status quo, and keep striving to make the world a little bit brighter, one thoughtful action at a time.